You wake up with a quiet certainty. You're you, you're in your body, you're seeing the world as it is. But that certainty is built moment by moment inside your brain. You're not observing reality, you're creating it. Disrupt the rhythm by dream, by drug, by accident, and the illusion starts to fracture. In the 1980s, scientists used a helmet wired with magnets. No drugs, no suggestions, no prompts. Yet people felt a presence in the room. Some spoke with gods. The brain created someone out of nothing. What system controls your sense of self? Why does it place you behind your eyes? And what happens when your self slips outside the body? Near-death visions, out-of-body experiences, encounters with impossible beings. The illusion of self is stable until it isn't. And when it cracks, what comes through may change how you understand everything. We're diving into one of the deepest mysteries of being human, where hard neuroscience touches the mystical, where ancient wisdom meets cutting-edge brain research. Together, we'll explore the system that builds a reality so convincing we almost never stop to question it. What happens when that theater of reality breaks down? When people float above operating tables, watching their own bodies being cut open? When electrical pulses can split one mind into two separate consciousnesses? When dying brains report encounters more vivid than waking life? The answers might change how you think about who you are. In 1955, neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield was performing delicate brain surgery on an epileptic patient. He needed to map her brain precisely. One wrong cut could destroy her ability to speak or move. He touched an electrode to a specific spot in her temporal cortex. There was no one there. The operating room was sterile, controlled, witnesses everywhere. Yet, this woman felt an intelligent presence with absolute certainty, more certain than she felt about the doctors surrounding her. Penfield had accidentally discovered something that would haunt neuroscience for decades. How does 3 pounds of neural tissue create the feeling of being someone? Today, we can reproduce Penfield's accident at will. We can make you leave your body, fracture your sense of self, or transport you to impossible worlds. But each discovery only deepens the mystery. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Michael Persinger built something that looked like a joke, a motorcycle helmet fitted with electromagnetic coils. It became known as the God helmet. Participants sat in a sensory deprivation chamber while weak magnetic fields pulsed through their temporal lobes. Many reported profound encounters, the feeling of an invisible presence, waves of terror or bliss, even conversations with what they believed were divine beings. Persinger had stumbled onto something crucial. The temporal lobes not only process memory and emotion, they maintain the boundary between self and other. Disrupt their electrical rhythms, and that boundary can dissolve. The brain sensing something is wrong creates an explanation. Someone else must be here, but not all brains are built the same. Some people have temporal lobes that fire more readily, neural networks more sensitive to electrical interference. These are often the same individuals who report spontaneous mystical experiences, who sense presences in empty rooms, who feel the approach of thunderstorms in their bones. Your personal history matters, too. If you've been taught to interpret unusual sensations as spiritual encounters, your brain has learned different pathways for making sense of the inexplicable. But Persinger's work had a fatal flaw. It was inconsistent, unreliable. Science demands reproducibility. What researchers needed was a way to reliably break consciousness itself, to fracture the sense of self on command. In 2002, neuroscientist Dr. Olaf Blanke accidentally discovered exactly that. He was conducting routine brain mapping on an epilepsy patient at a Swiss hospital. He inserted an electrode into her temporo-parietal junction, a region where the temporal and parietal lobes meet. He stimulated a certain part of her brain, a little bit above and behind the ear. They stimulated a very mild current there, and repeatedly for 2 seconds they applied the current, and for 2 seconds she experienced an out-of-body experience. She experienced being outside her body, under the ceiling, and she experienced looking down, seeing herself, seeing the doctor, a neuropsychologist, and an engineer. They could turn this out-of-body experience on and off by stimulating quite mildly this particular region in the brain, which is called the temporo-parietal cortex on the right side. Blanke had stumbled upon something extraordinary. He could reliably switch an out-of-body experience on and off like a light switch. But what stunned him most was the patient's certainty. The level of consciousness during an out-of-body experience feels to the person just like everyday reality, sometimes even more than reality. This wasn't supposed to be possible. According to everything neuroscience understood about consciousness, you should be located inside your body behind your eyes, experiencing the world from that fixed perspective. Yet here was proof that your sense of location, what feels like the most fundamental aspect of being you, could be relocated with a few millivolts of electricity. The discovery was entirely accidental. Blanke was mapping brain regions to plan the patient's epilepsy surgery, testing area after area to determine what could be safely removed. The out-of-body experience was what he calls a complete chance observation, but chance had revealed something profound. The temporo-parietal junction creates what neuroscientists call your body schema, your brain's constantly updated map of where you exist in space. Every moment, this region integrates information from your inner ear, your eyes, your sense of touch, your proprioception to maintain the illusion that you are located inside your physical boundaries. Disrupt this integration, and your sense of self can relocate entirely. Between 5 to 10% of the general population, millions of people across Europe alone, will experience this phenomenon at least once in their lifetime, usually during moments of extreme fatigue, emotional shock, or the twilight states between sleeping and waking. But Blanke's insight cuts deeper than just explaining unusual experiences. He reflects that it is not the out-of-body experience that is strange. It's the inside-body experience that we all have that is strange. The seizures stopped, but the patients developed an unprecedented condition, 2 separate streams of consciousness in one skull. During testing, a patient could simultaneously draw a circle with his right hand and a square with his left, completely unaware of the contradiction. When researchers asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, his left hemisphere answered draftsman, while his right hemisphere spelled out race car driver with letter blocks. The implications were staggering. If consciousness could be cleanly divided, what did that mean for the unified sense of self that feels so indispensable to human experience? These patients lived with what amounted to 2 separate conscious entities sharing one body. They would sometimes find their hands working at cross purposes. One hand buttoning a shirt while the other unbuttoned it, one reaching for an item while the other pushed it away. Their left brain, controlling speech, would often confabulate explanations for actions initiated by the mute right hemisphere, creating elaborate stories to explain behaviors it didn't understand. If consciousness can divide, multiply, and relocate with such apparent ease, what happens when it encounters something that completely rewrites the rules of reality? N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, is different from every other consciousness-altering substance. A single inhalation can launch people into fully formed worlds inhabited by entities that seem intelligent and alive. What makes it even stranger is that your own body produces it. The same enzymes that build serotonin also generate traces of DMT. Evolution has left us with the machinery for manufacturing visions. In the 1990s, Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico conducted the first controlled DMT studies. Volunteers spoke of being propelled into alien realms, meeting crystalline beings, communicating through color and geometry. The consistency of the visions is striking. The machine elves described in the studies appear in reports across cultures and continents. What's happening here? Brain imaging shows that psychedelics don't simply increase activity, they reorganize it entirely. Robin Carhart-Harris, a British psychopharmacologist, found that DMT quiets the default mode network, the system that maintains your sense of being a separate self. At the same time, brain regions that normally stay isolated begin cross-talking. Visual areas merge with auditory ones. Memory links to emotion. Logic dissolves into sensation. The brain explores configurations usually locked away. The chemistry offers clues. DMT floods serotonin 2A receptors in regions that filter perception. These receptors normally screen out excess information, keeping you tuned to survival. When overwhelmed by DMT, those filters collapse. Consciousness may not be hallucinating. It may be opening to streams of information usually kept outside awareness. In 2021, independent researcher and filmmaker Danny Gula asked DMT participants to view a laser interference pattern. Independently, several described identical scrolling symbols, what they called the source code of reality. If these were simple brain inventions, why would multiple people perceive the same novel details? At the edges of life and death, consciousness reveals perhaps its strangest behavior. Near-death experiences show remarkable consistency across cultures. Floating above the body, moving through tunnels of light, encountering beings of overwhelming love. The most documented case belongs to Pam Reynolds. In 1991, she underwent a rare procedure called hypothermic cardiac arrest. Surgeons at Barrow Neurological Institute needed to repair an aneurysm deep in her brain, but it was positioned where any conventional surgery would be fatal. The solution was radical. Drain all blood from her brain, cool her body to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and stop her heart completely. For all practical purposes, Pam Reynolds would be dead for the duration of the surgery. Dr. Robert Spetzler led the operation. EEG sensors showed her brain activity flatlined. Her core temperature dropped so low that cellular activity essentially stopped. No blood flowed to her brain. Her eyes were taped shut. Molded speakers covered her ears, playing loud clicks to monitor brain function. She should have experienced nothing. Yet, when Pam awakened, she described watching the entire operation from above the surgical table. She accurately recalled the bone saw's unusual appearance. It looked like an electric toothbrush, not the large circular saw she'd expected. She described conversations between surgical staff, specific instruments they used, even the song Hotel California playing in the operating room. Most remarkably, she reported the moment surgeons discovered her femoral artery was too small for the planned procedure. This discovery happened while her brain was completely flatlined, a time when, according to current neuroscience, she should have been incapable of any awareness. Dr. Spetzler, her neurosurgeon, later testified that he didn't think the observations she made were based on what she experienced as she went into the operating room theater. They were just not available to her. For example, the drill and so on, those things are all covered up. They're not visible. They were inside their packages. You really don't begin to open until the patient is completely asleep so that you maintain a sterile environment. Anita Moorjani's case pushes the boundaries further. Dying of lymphoma in a Hong Kong hospital, her organs shutting down one by one, she reported leaving her body and entering a space of infinite love and understanding. In this state, she claimed to receive knowledge that her cancer would completely disappear if she chose to return. Her doctors expected her death within hours. Instead, her tumors began shrinking almost immediately. Within weeks, they had vanished entirely. Her medical team documented the recovery but couldn't explain it. Her cancer had been too advanced, too aggressive for any known treatment to work. Dutch cardiologist Pim van Lommel conducted the largest prospective study of near-death experiences following 344 cardiac arrest survivors. 18% reported NDEs during their clinical death. What struck Van Lommel was the consistency. The same tunnels, the same beings of light, the same sense of returning with profound knowledge about existence. But perhaps most intriguing were the verified perceptions. Patients accurately described medical procedures, conversations, even events happening in other rooms while they were clinically dead. Some returned speaking languages they'd never learned or with mathematical insights they couldn't have possessed. From a materialist neuroscience perspective, these experiences might result from DMT flooding the brain during trauma, temporal lobe seizures, or oxygen deprivation, creating vivid hallucinations. The dying brain, some argue, constructs these visions as a final neurochemical event. Yet this explanation struggles with the verified perceptions. How can a flatline brain process visual information? Why do these hallucinations contain accurate details about events the person couldn't have witnessed? Religious traditions interpret these experiences as glimpses of an afterlife, evidence that consciousness survives bodily death. Tibetan Buddhism describes bardos, intermediate states between death and rebirth. Egyptian texts detail journeys through tunnels toward divine light. These ancient descriptions mirror modern NDE reports with uncanny precision. Perhaps most unsettling is what these experiences suggest about the nature of identity itself. If consciousness can exist when the brain shows no activity, if awareness can expand beyond the physical body, then what we call self might be far more than the neural patterns firing in our skulls. Some researchers propose a radical middle ground. Consciousness might be fundamental to the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. In this view, brains don't create consciousness. They focus and organize it like a radio tuning into a signal. When the brain fails, consciousness doesn't disappear. It simply loses its organizational structure, expanding beyond the boundaries we normally experience. The implications stretch far beyond neuroscience. If consciousness exists independently of brain states, it changes how we understand death, identity, and our place in the cosmos. It suggests that the you watching this video might be far more expansive and far more mysterious than any story your brain tells you. What we've seen challenges the basic assumption that consciousness emerges from neural activity. Instead, it might be something the brain channels, filters, and focuses, but doesn't create. When those filtering systems break down, consciousness doesn't vanish. It reveals its true nature. Right now, you're listening to this voice. You feel like you are the one doing it. But if the self is a story the brain tells, who exactly is listening and where are you really? Since you've made it this far, take a few more moments to reflect on the thoughts we've explored. You are not merely experiencing reality. You are creating it moment by moment, prediction by prediction. The sense of being behind your eyes is not given, it is earned. The strangest thing is not leaving the body, but being inside one. Consciousness may not hallucinate, but open to hidden streams of reality. What we call near death may be nearer to infinite love and understanding. Again and again, the same light, the same tunnels, the same return with knowledge too vast for words. If consciousness can divide, multiply, and relocate, what happens when it meets the unimaginable? Consciousness may be as fundamental as gravity woven into the universe itself. The you think you are is smaller than the you truly are. Brains do not manufacture awareness. They tune it like a radio, finding a signal. When filters fall away, consciousness does not end. It reveals its essence. Your brain weaves a convincing illusion of self from countless signals and calls it you. A small spark in the brain can switch entire worlds on and off. Through human consciousness, the universe has evolved a way to look at itself. If consciousness is the story your brain tells about reality, then DNA is the story life tells about itself. What makes you different from a rock? And why does life need a code at all? If you found these ideas about consciousness and reality fascinating, please show your support. Subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the mysteries of the mind and the universe. Give this video a like if it made you think, and share it with someone who would appreciate diving into these deep questions. Your engagement helps bring more content like this forward. Thank you for watching. Bring more content like this forward. Thank you for watching.